everybody. Welcome to this new Sunday talk show, The World This Week, or as we fondly call it, TWTW. This week, we saw the battle in Washington. More sanctions on Iran or not? A scandal on the Hudson.
I come out here today to apologize.
Another scandal in Paris. Political turmoil on the streets of Bangkok and on the streets of Cairo. In Damascus, business as usual. Here in Israel, former Prime Minister Ariel Sharon is laid to rest. In Denver, Legal Pod is a hit. These are some of the issues we'll touch upon this Sunday. We'll start off in Washington. Should the United States impose more sanctions on Iran? A bill sponsored by 59 senators calls for sanctions to be increased if Iranian-backed militias engage in anti-American terrorism, if Iran tests a missile with a range of 300 miles or more. President Obama has threatened to veto the bill. So, is this a diplomatic insurance policy or a deal killer, as the White House puts it? With us this Sunday are Sheldon Schorer, former chairman of Democrats Abroad, Israel. Hello.
Hello.
And in Washington, D.C., Josh Block, CEO and president of the Israel Project. Mr. Block, in Washington, what do you think this bill is a good idea?
It's important for the world to understand, for the global business community to understand, that it's not open season with Iran. After the administration signed the first stage deals, they call it, in Geneva in the fall, you began to see a flood of Western businessmen heading to Tehran, others thinking that the gates were about to kick open and it was going to be a new day in terms of their economy. And in order to keep the financial and economic pressure on Iran that the West needs to ensure that in the negotiations we have the leverage we need. If Iran were to cheat on the agreement that they've made, if they were to try to run out the clock and simply not make an agreement, we will trigger further sanctions.
Right. Well, Mr. Schorer, give us the party line. Is there a party line?
I'm not giving you the party, and I'll tell you what I think. I think that it's premature to make such a bill, and it's giving them, the Iranians, some power. If you make this bill, then you're giving the Iranians an excuse not to go through with the negotiations, saying that the America is going in bad faith.
But isn't this like the stick and the carrot?
Well, look, what you have here, you've already given the message. Just the fact that this bill has come up, just the fact that 59 senators have already gone to this way, I think Iran gets the message that either there are two ways of resolving this, either through hostility, fighting, sanctions, and possibly military intervention, or else through negotiations where Iran leaves its position as a hostile country and joins the world of nations.
Mr. Block, the White House says, look, we finally have an agreement. Why killing it now?
Well, in fact, as you may be aware, this White House and every other prior administration for the last 20 years has opposed strenuously congressional sanctions on Iran or on Syria or on other countries. And frankly, the goal of these sanctions is not to get Iran to the table. The goal of the sanctions is for Iran to recognize that it's too costly for them to pursue a nuclear program that would allow them to build a nuclear weapon, and when they consider the cost versus the benefit, the understanding that it's either survive as an economy, be a member of the international community in good standing, but in order to do that, you have to honor your commitments. 85% of Americans believe the Iranians are lying, and there's good reason for that. It's because they are.
Mr. Schorer.
That's got nothing to do with the sanction bill. To do a sanction bill at this time, again, is premature. We've gotten Iran to the table, and now we have to work out a deal. Iran knows that at the back of it, if the United States is not satisfied, if the Israelis are not satisfied, if there's going to be an atomic bomb in the hands of Iran, then it's simply not going to work. So they know that. The pressure is there. And to do the bill right now is simply to say we don't believe that negotiations are going to work, and we're going to the other way. I don't think that the United States wants to go all the way to a military option. And I'll tell you one other thing. If we abandon sanctions, if we start sanctions now, I don't think we'll get the support of all our allies. The allies who did the sanctions in order to get negotiations, if they see America abandoning so early the negotiations, they will abandon the sanctions.
Mr. Block, you know Washington very well. Maybe this is just part of the political game, these sanctions there?
They're broadly supported by a wide bipartisan majority of the Senate. In the House, it's the same thing. The House passed sanctions, I believe it was 399 to 4 or 400 to 5 in the fall, similar sanctions. And I think there's a reason for that. It's because Congress understands that the Iranians are lying. Congress, I think, is quite interested in America's national security and the security of our allies and our friends in the region. The Arab states, as you know, more worried about a nuclear Iran than Israel itself. So there's an ample reason for this measure to pass, and I think for the support that we see from people. I don't think it's political at all. It's certainly not a game. I think people out there take it very seriously, and they should.
Mr. Sharon,
well, he says Iran is lying. That's mean there's no point in having negotiations. I don't take that position. I think there is a possibility that negotiations will work. It has worked in other areas.
In one word,
Syria.
Is Prime Minister Netanyahu behind it?
Behind what? In addition,
new sanctions?
I don't want to speculate. I don't think so.
Sheldon Shore, thank you very much.
Please.
Thank you. Former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon was laid to rest this week after 8 years in a coma.
From my observation, he was a complex man, but to understand him better, I think it's important. History will judge. He also lived in complex times in a very complex neighborhood.
What is Sharon's legacy? Depends on who you're asking. We'll ask Alon Pinkas, who's former Israeli Consul General in New York, and Barbara Opel-Rome, Defense News Bureau Chief here in Israel. Alon, explain the multiple contradictions in Sharon's personality.
I'm not sure there's a contradiction here. There's a consistency. I think he is a man who epitomizes Israel's dissonance, the belief in military force and the realization that force can't achieve everything, the belief that Arabs can't be compromised with, but the understanding that there are limits to power, the belief that you can prevent a Palestinian state, and then the acknowledgement that there is no alternative to the two-state solution. So in one man, you see this entire dissonance being reflected, expressed, and it came to a climax point when he was prime minister, when he left behind him the first of those formulas and adopted the second parts.
Barbara, how do you explain this huge detour in Sharon's career?
You know, it's interesting. The legacy on the IDF is very clear. Ben-Gurion wrote the doctrine, but Sharon wrote the concept of operations: guerrilla, anti-terror, proactive, probing, preventive operations deep in enemy territory. And it's interesting that he came full circle against the advice of his general staff and the military leaders at the time. He withdrew unilaterally from Gaza, including the Philadelphia corridor. So I would say that his legacy is leadership. He didn't just talk about having to make painful decisions. He made them and he carried them out, often against the leaders of the military.
Right, and intended to do even more, but did not have the
Yes.
time. U.S.-Israeli relations have been seeing another first this week when Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Ya'alon was quoted as saying that Secretary of State John Kerry was messianic and obsessive. He might as well get a Nobel Peace Prize and leave us alone. Well, the State Department said that it was offensive. Kerry himself sounded somewhat forgiving.
Prime Minister Netanyahu and I talk regularly, and we are both very committed to moving the process forward. You know, we just can't let one set of comments undermine that effort, and I don't intend to.
Barbara, is this just the end of Kerry's mission around here?
I don't think so. The faux pas, the foot and mouth disease of Israel's defense minister is something that will be an agenda item and will have the residual effects, I think, for some time. Despite the unbreakable, unshakable relationship and how it's institutionalized, the military to military ties, it's a fact that the defense minister cannot ignore, that the $3.1 billion comes out of the State Department budget. It's the State Department that keeps Israel's nuclear issue off the agenda of various international fora. And it is the State Department that decides on arms sales to the Arab countries or export licenses for Israeli arms sales, and is in charge of preserving this qualitative military edge. There's going to be a lot of ramifications for this. The insult to General John Allen's strategic plan. I was speaking with a Pentagon senior official not too long ago, and he said more than 100,000 man-hours have been devoted on the security plan that was drafted up and dissed so vehemently by Israel's defense minister. So it's going to be a rocky road ahead, I think.
Right. Alon, it's Alon speaking, but many here think that he speaks for others as well in the government.
He speaks for the Prime Minister.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, the Prime Minister can't be faulted for the ad hominem attack on Kerry. And that was despicable, reckless, and silly. Foot and mouth disease, as Barbara said. But in terms of the substance, it's time that Kerry realizes that this Israeli government, in its current form and composition, equally so the Palestinians, but we're talking about Israel, is incapable, unwilling, and not enthusiastic about the General Allen plan or the Kerry
Maybe
initiative.
Kerry's failing. Maybe it's just
He's not failing. We are failing. I mean, look, let's put it in a slightly historic context. The one thing that Palestinians and Israelis have always managed to agree on was why it's always America's fault. The one thing that they always find themselves in cahoots about is the Secretary of State was wrong and the President was wrong and the Americans are not inventive and not creative and too involved or not involved enough. The fact of the matter is that this messianic, obsessive man is also head of a department that cast a veto on anti-Israeli decisions in the anti-Israeli resolutions in the Security Council 51 times. So if I were Alon, I'd shut up.
Alon and Barbara, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you.
We'll talk about French politics and romance shortly, but first we'll take a breather, if you will. We wanted to check how Denver is doing after legalizing pot. We spoke to Linda Andrews. She owns a store in Denver. Hi, Linda. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Oh, we're fine. How's your business? How business is doing since it's legal there?
Business is amazing. It's crazy. It's so much more than we expected.
Wow. Give us some numbers. How many people? How much money? How is it going?
Well, the first 2 days we did 1,000 people a day, and that is generally, that's more than we do in a month.
Who are your customers, actually?
My customers are everyone. Probably more than half are males.
Who's producing all of this? You alone?
I actually grow in the back of my own store. I have a pretty large space, and I have 2 growers. We grow our product in the back. We cultivate it and we bring it to the front of the store.
Any second thoughts of, about selling drugs to people?
No, because I don't really consider it a drug any more than I consider alcohol a drug.
Do you expect pot tourism in Denver now?
I actually do.
Really?
I actually do. I believe on the first 2 days, 3/4 of our people were from out of town. There is talk that we will become the new Amsterdam. I don't know. We are very careful about educating all of our customers on the legalities. You cannot have it in public. You cannot use it while you were driving. It's like alcohol, but more restricted.
Well, Linda Andrews in Denver, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to speak with you.
Let's talk French politics and French romance. With us is Joanna Koci from I24 News, the French channel. Not only the French angle, give us the feminine angle in all of this. All these male politicians, is there any feminine angle to this scandal?
Yeah. First of all, I think this story is taking too much importance in the media. Everybody is talking about it. The French TV, the newspaper, the radio, the foreign media. Of course, cheat on someone is not good, is even really bad. But he's not the first man who cheat on his wife, and if we can call Valérie Trierweiler his wife. And he won't be the last one to do that. So, and moreover, there is no link with his politics. So if he does a good job, if he's a good president, if he's just trying to be a good president, what is the problem? Actually, I think the only person who needs his apologize is Valérie Trierweiler, not the actress Julie Gaillet, not the French people, not the journalists, not the rest of the world. It's his personal life. And I think he was right to not talk about this during the press conference on Tuesday and to not answer the question of the journalist.
And this is not your own personal view only. This is the view of the French people in general.
This is my point of view. I can't talk for everybody, of course, and I think so. And I'm not the only one to think this,
but
because
according to the polls,
yeah,
they agree with this.
according to a survey, 75% of the French population think François Hollande was right to not speak about this. And I know it's not like this in other countries. I know in US, for example, the people want to know everybody about the president. They want to know his politics, his professional life, and his personal life. And is it really better? Is it really good? Everybody should keep a part of his life secret. So let's judge him on his politics.
It's different in France. Thank you very much, Joanna. Thank you. Well, this has been The World This Week. We'll see you here next Sunday. Have a good week.